Thanks for coming along with us on our recent day trip to Sly Park Recreation Area up at Jenkinson Lake to do a little fishing. We've been itching to get out, and just like every year, we had a beautiful weekend at the end of February and couldn't wait to see what we could do with some of our new fishing tackle. Coming from a fairly extensive background in public history, we have a deep and abiding interest in both experimental anthropology and experimental archaeology. And one of the ways that we like to play with both of those and grow our understanding of the periods that we're involved in is by utilizing original gear whenever possible. So take a look at the pictures that we have in line here on this video, and you'll see some of the gear we're using. And as we go through our fishing scenes, we'll talk about some of that in finer detail. Now that you've seen some of the gear we brought with us, we can take a little closer look at what we were actually fishing with that day. Ethan was using an original Bristol telescoping steel rod with a Shakespeare Triumph level winding reel, and I was using an unmarked telescopic steel rod and unmarked reel. Obviously, we weren't using original line, so we chose what we believed to be an acceptable option in the Bass Pro Excel braided line. As for lures, we were alternating between original and modern approximations of period lures. Jenkinson Lake is stocked with trout, large and smallmouth bass, and bluegill, and we worked the lake accordingly. Typical with most of the period literature on bait casting, we weighted the line as best we could, and while we didn't catch anything, it was a great experience working with the bait casters and experimenting with different lure combinations and casting techniques. We appreciate that bait casting isn't always easy, and it's stymied both of us on more than one occasion. So we did what we normally do, and we went to the primary source material for answers and hopefully a little help. We're going to start with the description of bait casting from the book Fishing Facts for the Novice and the Expert by Sheridan R. Jones, which was published by the angling editor of Outdoor Life in 1927. In bait casting, the rod is raised over the shoulder, while the lure hangs some 8 to 12 inches below the tip. The thumb is pressed against the spool of line, and the rod brought sharply forward while this pressure is still applied. As the rod tip passes toward the front, the arm is straightened out and the thumb pressure partially removed, thus shooting the bait after the manner of throwing an apple from a pointed stick. Too quick a release of the thumb will send the bait high in the air. Too slow a release will dash it at the caster's feet. Too much pressure will make the bait fall short. Too little pressure, while the bait is traveling, will cause a bird's nest or a backlash. Our next primary account comes from Bait Casting for the Novice and Expert by Sheridan Jones, published again by Outdoor Life in 1927. In this example, they give fairly detailed descriptions of the overhead cast, the lateral cast, and the underhanded cast. For the purpose of this video, however, we're only going to be looking at the overhead cast. Making this cast, the rod is dropped back over the right shoulder, largely by relaxing the muscles of the wrist, the elbow remaining in the neighborhood of the waistline. The tip will fall somewhat below the horizontal from the shoulder, but the point from which the cast is started will vary with the temperament of the angler. A sharp, snappy cast may well be started from near the horizontal, but a slow, swinging cast will need to begin well below the horizontal position. Thumbing the reel firmly, the rod is brought straight over the shoulder, and when it has reached the vertical, the arm is shot straight out toward the front, as in a striking blow, the rod being brought on over to a 45-degree angle from the head, while the arm is traveling to an extended position. Some casters carry on down to a nearly horizontal position, finishing by pointing the rod tip at the desired spot or a few feet above this spot. Being that a matter of a few inches, we will consider this merely form. It is during the time that the rod is traveling straight toward the front that the thumb pressure is removed and the lure given its direction of flight. Naturally, there is some knack about this lessening of thumb pressure, but it is 9/10 of the casting problem. With a present light control of the line, the angler watches the flying lure until it approaches the desired spot, and then shuts down just a wee bit with the thumb. Checked in the air, the lure hesitates and settles down. Should the lure reach the water unchecked, there is a splash. Should the checking be too sudden, the lure will jump back at the angler or be snapped off if the cast has been a strong one. If the angler has been employing the line thumbing method, the reel will finish the cast on the upper side of the rod and only slightly tipped toward the left. But if the end drum has been thumbed, the reel should stand practically on end and be on the left side of the rod when it reaches its position of rest after the cast. This puts the spool in the better position for spinning. Keep this fact in mind always. It is the wrist and the forearm that do the major part of the work in casting. Rarely is it necessary to use a full arm swing when casting by the overhand route. Thanks so much for watching the video. Stay tuned for more, and as always, like, share, subscribe, help us get our name out there. Thanks a lot.